If you find that you're constantly banging your head against the wall trying to figure out what you can do to get faster, technique's a pretty obvious way to do it. But there are a lot of different ways that you can improve and increase on your swim speed. So in this video, I'm going to cover 10 different ways that you can increase your swim speed. Did you know that your catch is the same in butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and freestyle? It's the same position, just in a different position in the water. So the catch is exactly the same. So if you start to train a different stroke, let's say you only do freestyle. If you start to do a little bit of work on your backstroke or your breaststroke, maybe a butterfly, that can help you enhance your feel for the water and can help you figure out different ways to move through the water. So by doing another stroke apart from freestyle can actually help your freestyle because the catch is the same. And if you can develop your feel for the water, doing a different stroke, then that is the first way to increase your swim speed. Quite often we get stuck training the same way for many years and we fail to just stop, take a look and assess the way that we are training and try and find a different way or a better way of approaching it. So if you find that you've been stuck at the same speed for many years or many months and nothing's quite clicking, it could be worthwhile taking a look at that and just assessing, how am I actually training? And is there a different type of training that I could be doing? If you look at someone like Brett Hawke's Sprint Revolution, he's really focused on those short, fast sprints using resistance. That is a different way of training for a lot of people. And that could shock the body into training and developing in a different way than it has in the past. So it's worthwhile considering how you're training and seeing if there might be some other different types of training you could do. For example, maybe all of your training's done at exactly the same speed. You might be able to start to do some different types of sessions. Maybe you start doing some sprints, maybe some more threshold sessions. Start mixing up the pace. There's a lot of different ways that you can train to help you break out of that rut that you might be stuck in. As adults and as triathletes, we often only think about the swimming part of the time that we're in the pool. We're not thinking about our push-offs or our turns or our finishes. Now, while those skills may not help you necessarily in the open water when you're racing, you're going to be doing those things on repetition hundreds of times in a session. You're going to be pushing off the wall. You're going to be turning. And it doesn't hurt to look at being diligent with your skills and looking to improve them. Because I would say for the majority of people that I coach in terms of triathletes and adults, there is at least 1 to 2 seconds per 100 available in the way that they push off the wall, the way that they turn, the way that they finish. You can improve on those skills. And while it may not help you in your races necessarily, the confidence and the kick that you'll get out of actually being able to bring your times down 1 or 2 seconds, maybe more, by having better push-offs, better turns, that is an easy way to find extra speed that will give you confidence and will show you that there's so much more that you can do just outside of the physical training side of things that you can actually get faster in many different ways. And also just being able to feel that streamlined position, get into that streamlined position and practice it off your walls, that's going to help you going forwards, because the more that you can be attuned to and have that awareness around, am I holding a streamlined position in general? Well, that's going to help you long term. So it is worthwhile being diligent with your skills in your push-offs, your turns, and your finishes. As adults, the things that we're required to do in terms of work, driving in the car, those kinds of things, they can lead to us becoming very rigid and stiff. And being rigid and stiff doesn't help us when we're swimming. And the way that you can swim faster and improve your times is becoming more mobile, more flexible, and becoming more supple in general. And that doesn't happen straight away. That takes time. But if you could include 5 to 10 minutes of some mobility work before a session 3 times a week, long term, that's going to make a big difference. And I think mobility through the upper back, so your thoracic rotation, your shoulders, those couple of things can really make a big difference. And just by including a couple of simple exercises long term, I've found that that's helped a lot of swimmers not only improve their speed and their times, but also avoid injury. because if you're very stiff, it can be hard to get into some of the ideal positions for your stroke. And if it's hard to do that, then you're not going to be able to get into the right technique, and you're going to be limited with the speed you can achieve. So by just starting to develop these good habits with your mobility and flexibility, over the next 3 to 6 months, you'll see the results of those. And that is a way that I've seen a lot of swimmers improve their times. As a kid, I used to train in a squad every single session. And then when I moved away, I went to university, I started to do a lot of my training on my own. And the benefit to that is that you've usually got less people in the lane. You're not being forced to go faster than what you should and what's required from that session. And you have the time and the space just to really focus on your technique. But the downside to that is rarely do you push yourself as much as you would if you were with other swimmers. So if you're currently doing all of your training solo, it can really help to find another person or a group or a squad to train with once or twice a week, because you'll find that not only will you be pushed a lot harder that way, but you'll also find that the sessions go a lot quicker. You can do a lot more volume. You find that you're not thinking about getting out halfway through. Things go a lot faster when you've got other people around. So if you're currently training solo every single session, maybe there's a group or a squad that you could join once or twice a week that's going to help push you, increase the distance that you're doing. And it can also be a lot more fun when you've got other people involved in that session and training with you. So finding a squad or a group to swim with is another way to swim faster. When I started running a lot more, I ended up tracking every single run that I was doing with my watch. Now, I found that was really beneficial, and I like to see my time and my pace. Now, sometimes that tracking gets carried into our swimming, where we're using our watches or our goggles and we're tracking every little thing that we do. Now, that's not a bad thing necessarily, but I do find that because swimming is so technical, and a large part of the way you're going to be able to swim faster is going to come from your technique. Swimming is very much about feel. It's very much about your connection with the water, how you feel. It's that body awareness that you develop. So if you are distracted by technical things like your watch or your goggles every single session, you might be missing out on an important part of that connection with the water, which is just getting away from the technology, enjoying being in the water, enjoying that feel for it, the sounds of it, and also just developing the body awareness around how you're holding your body, what your arms are doing, your rotation, being hyper aware of those things. That comes a lot easier, I have found, when I'm not thinking too much about the technology. So just by taking your watch off, putting that to the side at least once a week, I find has helped a lot of swimmers just enjoy that process of being in the water. And I've had many people message me saying that, okay, once I've done this, I actually found that my stroke improved and my times actually started to improve once I did start to track that stuff again. So I'm not saying get rid of it completely, but it's not a bad thing to do at least once a week, just to step away from it and just be at one with the water, and you become much more aware. And I find it's a lot more enjoyable. Whenever we do breath control training as part of our session, where we might breathe every 3 strokes, every 5, every 7, every 9, I find that the better swimmers are able to relax and slow their stroke down while hitting those breath control numbers. Where the swimmers who aren't quite as good, what they want to do is they want to rush through those strokes to try and get to the next breath, but they end up using more energy and getting tired quicker. So if you're able to control the way that you swim, if you're able to relax and just be comfortable slowing things down, keeping that heart rate down and relaxing in the water, that will actually allow you to not only swim better and ultimately swim faster, but you're going to move through the water a lot better. So it's counterintuitive, but to be able to hold your breath for longer, if you're doing, say, breathing every 7, the easier way is to actually just slow things down and relax, because you can be much more efficient that way. Whereas if you find that you start to panic and you've got that sense of fear and you're starting to get the stroke rate up too high, you're not going to be able to last very long if you're holding your breath and breathing every 7 or every 9. So if you can develop that ability to stay cool and calm under pressure, that can actually help when it comes to racing. because quite often when we're racing, there's that sense of fear and panic, and there's other people around in the open water. And that means that we tend to use a lot more energy. We tend to shorten our breaths and just breathe into this top part of our lungs where we don't actually get to absorb that much oxygen. So if you can learn to keep cool under pressure when you've got a long time in between breaths, that can help you when it comes to racing. So I think that breath control is a really good skill to develop and something that's worth including as part of your training. So an easy way to do that, we would do something like 850s off a minute. You can do it on 115 or 130, it doesn't matter what the cycle is, where you do the first 50 breathing every 3, then breathe every 5, every 7, and then every 9. And you'd repeat that to make 8. So a little bit of breath control is a really good thing to do in the earlier part of your session. And you'll find that not only does that help with your CO2 tolerance, but you'll find that just mentally, you'll feel like you can keep a lot calmer when it comes to the pointy end of your main set where you're starting to work hard. In the off season, I find that a lot of triathletes like to do a swim block. And I think committing a certain amount of time to focusing on your swim can be a really good thing to do. Because if you can train like a swimmer for 1 to 2 months, and by training like a swimmer, I mean doing maybe 1.5, 2 times as many swim sessions as you'd normally do. If you get that kind of frequency and increase the volume by 1.5 to 2 times over that period as well, you'll find that you start to figure out what you need to do to move better through the water and swim faster. So by having a swim block, maybe it's 4 to 8 weeks long, where you're doing might be 4, 5, maybe 6 sessions a week. And I know that sounds like a lot, but having that swim block commitment, you'll find that you really start to feel like you are becoming a swimmer. So pushing the boundaries on what you're comfortable doing in terms of how many sessions, in terms of the distance, that can really help fast track your progression as a swimmer. And it's not something that you need to do for 12 months, but 4 to 8 weeks I find is a good jolt to the nervous system, to your body, mentally as well, to helping you really develop your swimming. And I've seen this with a lot of athletes I've worked with. The ones that have committed to a swim block, they tend to level up and they maintain that level of swimming going forwards after that. It's easy to get sidetracked as a swimmer. Sidetracked by new things to work on in our stroke, new ways we're trying to improve, and we can often just not focus on one aspect of our stroke for long enough to make it a habit and to make it change. So if you have the patience to pick one thing to focus on for 3 months, guaranteed that is going to help improve the way that you swim. Now, make sure that that thing is specific to you and it's actually going to make a difference. So let's say, for example, that might be your head position. If you know that your head position is just not consistently in the right spot and you're lifting it up too much and it's dropping your hips and dropping your legs, if you spent 3 months focusing just on that, locking that in as a habit, that is likely going to change for good. And you're going to make that your new position and it's going to stick there. But too often we get distracted by different things to focus on. So if you can be patient with your development as a swimmer and pick one thing, focus on that for 3 months, that will really help you going forwards. I find no matter what it is, whether it's your taxes, whether it's moving, whether it's swimming, it pays to get a professional to help you. And whenever we run clinics and someone had been putting off doing a clinic and they finally book in, more times than not, they say, I wish I'd done this sooner because now I know what I'm doing wrong. Now I know what I actually need to change and I know what I need to work on. And quite often people will lose 12, 18, 24 months of progress because they have put off getting professional help. And whether that's us, whether that's another coach to help you or look at your stroke, it helps to get someone to give you advice on what it is that you could do to get better.